breaking updates. Very important. Snow White, there's been an enormous amount of controversy surrounding Snow White, obviously.
I think it's fair to say that no one can stand the star of this movie.
A lot of people don't like her. A lot of people don't like her either. She's got a big mouth. She talked trash about the original movie.
Controversy has been dogging this movie since the very beginning. So much so that the Daily Wire, I think we played a major role in basically forcing Disney to go reshoot it. Well, it didn't help, apparently. Disney's Snow White is essentially a box office dud.
Disney's new live-action remake of Snow White debuted this weekend, and it's an even bigger dud than anticipated.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole.
Disney is having its own problems. They're finally releasing the latest adaptation of Snow White, but they're scaling back the Hollywood premiere of the film. Kinsey, why is that?
Because Rachel Zegler is a PR nightmare.
And now you better have a good reason to get people to the theaters, and this ain't it. The movie apparently is not very good. I haven't seen it yet. I would be shocked if it were. Again, the star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public. Studios really need to go back to what they originally did, which was tell your stars to shut up and not say things, because no one is paying to hear your star say offensive things off the screen.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and do the job.
Now, one thing about Rachel Zegler is that we know that she's not helping at all one bit.
Every time she opens her mouth, it's crisis mode when it comes to Disney having to backtrack. She talks about how this isn't a fairy tale about falling in love with the prince. This is a fairy tale about fighting your own battle.
She's not like the ideal choice for the lead role in Sweet Snow White.
Now, one thing that is already universally known at this point by the general public is the fact that Disney is in full-on damage control mode.
This is truly, like, she has to go. I'm sorry, Disney. She has to go.
I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry.
There are a lot of reasons you have to suspend disbelief when you watch a movie like Snow White. There's magic, and there's talking forests and animals that act in human ways and such. But probably the biggest aspect of disbelief you have to suspend is the idea that Gal Gadot, as the wicked witch here, as the evil stepmother, is somehow less good looking than Rachel Zegler. Come on, gang. We ain't blind.
Neither of them make any sense for their roles. We've already covered how Rachel Zegler's a terrible choice for Snow White. Gal Gadot, who plays the queen, the first problem is that she's the evil queen. The evil queen is supposed to be envious of Snow White's beauty, and that is just not believable. I cannot buy that Gal Gadot is angry that she's not as beautiful as Rachel Zegler. I cannot buy that.
I understand that we're supposed to pretend that disabilities no longer exist or something, but we're not all blind. We can still see. I don't know if that mirror was broken.
Has there been a film with worse casting than this? And I don't just mean the Snow White actress. Obviously, she's terrible, but both of them.
Oh, man. Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig, and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
There's a reason why the public has shifted. If you can't avoid this movie, you absolutely should, because it's absolute trash. I know some people like this movie. Some people are stupid. Oops! Oops!
Welcome back to Fame Focus. Imagine this well-loved masterpiece. A celebrity who appears unimpressed with the aforementioned classic, and a commentary. When Ben Shapiro set his sights on Disney's new Snow White, we got exactly the three-a drama we expected from a titan who can smell a flop a mile away.
Then they decided to cast Rachel Zegler, who is Hispanic, as Snow White. Now, again, you can cast people however you want to cast people. I really don't care. However, Snow White, in which the description of the character is skin as white as snow, lips red as the rose, right? I mean, there's an actual physical description of the part. Not my fault it's written that way. It ain't racist to write it that way. That's the description of the part. That's what it is. The name of the movie is Snow White, okay?
And in particular on Rachel Zegler, the actress who played the princess as if it were a tiresome task.
If I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed on.
This version appears to have done the exact opposite of Snow White's original claim to fame, which was singing in the forest and playing charming dwarfs. It caused confusion, cost a fortune, and may have given Disney executives more heart palpitations than the evil queen herself.
Behind the scenes, you guys know as well as I do that those executives like Spielberg are looking at that saying, Rachel Zegler can F right off.
Now
buckle
fasten
up.
your seatbelts as we explain how this fairy tale transformation evolved from a story about what not to do to one that might be cool. Reviving an 80-year-old masterpiece, the complete tale without any real dwarfs is ready. Let's dive right in. The story starts when Disney decided it was time to revive Snow White, the first full-length animated film ever made in the 1930s. The original is a classic, cherished, and generally considered to be a somewhat dangerous film. Picture to play about with, but Disney, who was familiar with revival, went ahead and cast Rachel Zegler, who had just made her breakthrough in a musical success.
One of the reasons why Rachel Zegler sticks around is she's got a beautiful voice and she has some talent. So I think that certainly helps her because she's a PR nightmare. I don't know how anyone would hire her.
Now, fasten your seatbelts as we explain how this fairy tale transformation evolved from a story about what not to do to one that might be cool. Reviving an 80-year-old masterpiece, the complete tale without any real dwarfs is ready. Let's dive right in. The story starts when Disney decided it was time to revive Snow White, the first full-length animated film ever made in the 1930s. The original is a classic, cherished, and generally considered to be a somewhat dangerous film. Picture to play about with, but Disney, who is familiar with revival, went ahead and cast Rachel Zegler, who had just made her breakthrough in a musical success.
It showed that the dwarves were not, in fact, dwarves in Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, because that would be offensive apparently to little people, so instead, they just made the dwarves normal-sized humans, which was idiotic, because that's not the story. Then they decided they couldn't actually cast, little people in these roles, so they decided to cast big people and then shrink them down using CGI, so it looks terrible.
However, perhaps it was merely a creative twist. Disney undoubtedly had a strategy, but let's take a closer look. If you're the face of a well-known, charming, and idealistic figure, perhaps refrain from bluntly telling them that you think the original is out of date.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Never revisited Snow White again. So I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years.
Yet that's precisely what Zegler did. In multiple interviews, she made it known she wasn't the biggest cheerleader of the 1937.
You ought to have witnessed some of the supporters' reactions after that. How can your main princess convince everyone else of the fantasy if she is unable to evoke even a small amount of nostalgia for the original movie? Hiring someone to throw a birthday party.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
After that, you should have seen some of the fans' reactions. Jaws dropped, heads scratched. If your lead princess can't muster up at least some nostalgia.
Each of whom has a unique personality. However, in the new version, they were replaced with ambiguous magical creatures.
Did the dwarfs make it or no?
Well, the CGI dwarfs did. Of course, that goes back to the original controversy where Peter Dinklage, a very talented little person actor, said, "Why are we doing that?"
Fans took to social media to point out that the title Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is essentially set in stone for a reason. This daring departure left many viewers feeling the magic was lost before the film even came to theaters. If that wasn't enough, the next bombshell sealed this remake's fate like an apple dunked in a suspicious potion to make matters even more dramatic. Now, before we go any further, don't forget to like and subscribe because, let's face it, I'm nothing without your support. Disney reportedly spent hundreds of millions of dollars to make Snow White a reality.
It cost $270 million to make. $270 million.
You'd think a big budget would guarantee jaw-dropping visuals, brilliant marketing, and a cast that'd be carefully coached on not insulting.
You would think that a large budget would ensure stunning visuals, clever marketing, and a cast that would be carefully trained to avoid demeaning the original yet. However, the money ended up going everywhere, but to reassuring fans that this was a faithful, endearing remake. From promotional posters that left fans perplexed to early trailers that concentrated more on sweeping landscapes than the actual plot. Disney was obviously attempting something grand.
Disney has botched this Snow White movie every way it's possible to botch the Snow White movie. So you'll recall that originally the Snow White movie starring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, you'll remember that film had a trailer so awful that Disney had to completely recut the movie.
However, the grander it seemed, the more the audience braced for disappointment. Would high-priced CGI stand in for the dwarfs everyone loved?
As you may remember, the first Snow White movie, which starred Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, had such a terrible trailer that Disney had to completely recut the film. However, the more extravagant the film appeared to be, the more the audience was prepared for disappointment. Would expensive computer-generated imagery, CGI, replace the beloved dwarfs? Or could glossy effects compensate for a star who seemed unimpressed with the original material? Based on the box office results, the answer may be having an estimated production and marketing budget of $270 million. Yet even that little amount turned out to be overly optimistic. Everyone realized that this was a complete failure, as Snow White hobbled in a few million lower.
Early estimates suggested that they would take in 48 to 58 million in the first weekend. Apparently, it did 43 million in its first weekend. But this live-action remake is a giant fail. It is not doing well at the box office.
That means Snow White is destined to be one of the biggest bombs in Disney history. It will not recoup.
News spread fast. Headlines declared that audiences weren't enchanted by the new Snow White. Pundits rattled off reasons. The sideline
news quickly spread, with headlines claiming that viewers weren't enchanted by the new Snow White. Commentators cited the dwarfs' exclusion, excessive use of computer graphics, or perhaps the star's unflattering comments about the original.
Now you have Rachel Zegler thinking, oh, that 1937 movie, that's just, oh, it's tacky, it's weird, it's, we're gonna change all that.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
And that's precisely when fans decided to hit Rachel Zegler and the entire production with the dwarf-less pickaxe. Now, if your lead actress continues to tell the world how out-of-date the original story is, guess what happens? The audience checks out. Fans have called it a self-inflicted wound for Disney, pointing out that their marketing pitch essentially boiled down to, hey, remember that classic you love well? We change most of it, and the star thinks the old version is silly, so buy a ticket, please. Fans analyzed every dubious choice with the same fervor one might use to criticize a burnt Soul, the missing dwarfs, or any other bizarre creative blunder. The celebrities' disinterest in the narrative PR poisoning, the cherry on top of this catastrophe, was the staggering budget, which plummeted harder than a wheelless wagon. On the one hand, some people were truly disappointed because they were hoping for a new but respectful take on Snow White. But on the other hand, it's difficult to feel sorry for a production that seemed to skirt around the very elements that made the story a beloved classic for decades. There have been rumors that Disney executives were caught off guard by the backlash, saying they had no idea Zegler's interviews would evoke such negative feelings. If that's the case, it could be the biggest plot twist in the entire fiasco. It's surprising that a large studio wouldn't pay more attention to the messaging in a time when anything an actor says can go viral. However, it's possible that internal discussions about reshoots or last-minute marketing changes led to the final product arriving with all the momentum of a deflated balloon at a birthday party. By the time the movie was in theaters, the hype had been overshadowed by comedic takedowns and was reverberating on the internet like a dwarf canyon shout.
But these guys at Disney, they're not that bright, they're not that smart, and we see that because they can't come up with any new IP. Why not write some new movies? You guys sit around, you have billions of dollars, they keep going back and rewriting the classics.
So, is there a silver lining? Possibly. For one, Disney might rethink how they handle reboots of cherished classics. If the formula includes...
Is there a bright side then? If the formula involves ignoring the main attraction, such as the dwarfs, and casting a lead who is unable to conceal her disinterest in the original material, Disney may want to reconsider how they handle reboots of beloved classics. Even major studios cannot rely solely on brand recognition. Fans don't want mindless cheerleading, but there's a big gap between I adore everything about it and the product feeling removed from its origins. Secondly, there's a lesson for actors. If you're going into an iconic position, at least show respect for what made it iconic. And this story is so outdated if you can't strike a balance. You might find yourself on the receiving end of a commentator's comedic wrath, and the internet rarely forgets a viral takedown in the end with disappointing box office numbers. A star who had certainly told fans not to bother and creative choices that left audiences longing for Doc Grumpy and the gang. This remake is a prime example of how good intentions can go horribly wrong. So what do you think was the downfall triggered by Zegler's remarks alone? Or was the dwarf storyline the real culprit? Could Disney have salvaged this movie? Click the like button if you enjoy breakdowns of cinematic highs and embarrassing lows. If they adhered more closely to the 1937 original, or if you're one of the few who truly enjoyed this fresh take, please share your thoughts in the comments. Sign up and turn on the alert. If we've learned anything from the Snow White saga, it's that even the most magnificent fairy tales can fail if the enchantment behind them disappears. Belle, make sure you don't miss the next train wreck we find. Until then, keep an eye out, be careful, and stay updated solely on the Concentrate on Fame.